Welcome to the Unscripted SEO podcast, your place to dive deep into the complex world of search engine optimization, bringing you insight, anecdotes, and real-life application from experts in the SEO industry. And here's your host, Jeremy Rivera.
Hello, I'm Jeremy Rivera, and this is the Unscripted SEO podcast, where I'll be interviewing all kinds of SEOs over time. Today I have Ray Martinez, and we're going to learn a little bit more about him, what his specialties are, his industries and experience. So what would you say is the main thing you're working on right now, Ray?
Hi, Jeremy. Thanks for having me on. Main thing I work on now is in the higher ed space. So, I work for Archer Education. I'm VP of SEO. I run a team of SEOs. We specifically focus in enrollment marketing. So our job is not just to drive leads, but to actually generate leads that turn into enrolled students. Mm-hmm. So a little bit more nuanced, a little bit more of a longer sales cycle in terms of the product. My personal specialty in SEO, where I cut my chops, was technical SEO. That was something that really connected with me very early on. I was actually taught by a guy named Richie Larsden, who was based in San Diego last time I checked. But he showed me from the ground up probably about I want to say a decade ago now, where, because I'd started 4 years before, but I'd only learned the worst practices. And so I had this really great teacher come in and, set the foundation, him and this guy, Andy Kelly. You'll find him on Twitter, Sanjuro. They both sat me down and really gave me a framework of understanding technical SEO, which took it from being, I want to say in the 2014 times where people were doing that checklist approach and everything was very much checklist, scorecard, but taking it a step further and saying, here's what you actually need to do to implement these things.
Yeah. SEO, you can talk a good game all the time. Look at your analytics every morning, look at the numbers in Search Console and be like, why isn't it changing? Why am I not getting more clicks and impressions? And you got to do something. You got to have a ground game. I think I've used the metaphor of using Tai Chi. It's small, silly looking, repetitive movements that over time have a cumulative impact.
Yeah, I mean, and I could talk about the seriousness of technical SEO. Everyone thinks about it it's kind of this black box. But no, when you really think about the nature of what it is and being able to crawl pages, it's so important. I have an example, and I'm not going to say this university's name, but there was a university out there. They hired a team to do a web migration. This team did not think about SEO at all. And what ended up happening was they built the custom 404 page, mm-hmm. But the custom 404 page had all 404 links pointing to broken subfolder. So it was basically doing that repetitive path subfolder issue where, if you use relative linking, you're going to create a repetitive path over and over and over again. So this sat live on the site for 3 years. In that time frame, they saw about a 60% reduction in organic traffic to the university. And, in particular right now, universities across the United States are at a very interesting place and time because there's what's called the enrollment cliff, where it's projected that enrollments and students actually interested in education will drop off. Mm. So, smaller schools that lose that sort of revenue, lose that sort of traffic, simply can't sustain that loss of revenue.
Yeah, no, I've worked with a couple of different universities. One was just subcontracting for a site designer. And, in the process, we realized that somebody had hacked one of their marketing departments and then discovered that somebody else was running an exploit because their search was producing permanent URLs on their edu. So they were spamming the search with, porn and pills URLs.
That's not surprising at all. I've done a lot of research on that, and some of these things are really what they're used for, and some of the products are super dangerous. There was the Harvard CBD gummy story, which was kind of broadcast and pushed out live, where Harvard was basically exploited because one of their students, I guess, was phished. And, with these platforms, a lot of these university platforms allow students to build either a subdomain or a subfolder in like a multi-site WordPress build. So all I need is access, right? And then I'm gonna install my plugin that's cracked, or I can do whatever I want to. And if universities don't set proper guardrails, yeah, those exploits are insane. Like I've run crawls, found a lot of stuff out there in the wild. I think that's black hat SEO though. I think they're going to get in where they fit in, and these are some of the most attractive domains because, and I'm gonna say a hot take. I don't think Google will ever give a .edu a manual action.
It's bold. I cannot disagree with you though. I think we've seen there's only been a handful of manual actions on very big ticket, big brand entities. Then those were public beatdowns meant to cause fear and loathing. But I agree. I cannot see them slapping down Stanford or in any big university. It's just
I think the thing that Google fears most, which it's very timely, is regulation. And so they spend, hundreds of millions of dollars in lobbying a year to make sure that the government is never in their business. So, to regulate a university and to put manual action against a university and de-index them would raise an ire of suspicion. So I think, a lot of black hats know this. Like you can go on Fiverr right now and buy .edu link injections. And I've tested them and I've purchased them, tested them, and they've indexed and passed page rank. How do I know? Because they're in Search Console.
Yeah. There's few things that do show up in Search Console, but like
when they do, that's an important indicator. And sometimes you get crap in there and some large sites. But I like to look at, my best indicator if Google's actually looking at and saying, is this link worth anything?
Yeah.
Is it showing up and reporting in Search Console?
That's an excellent note, and everybody should jot that down. I'm definitely going to make a note of that in the show notes.
Because it's also compounded. It's not just Google, right? Like when it shows up in Search Console, that means it was crawled and indexed, right? So also we have to think about the nature of the sites that we're pushing these links on. Like a .edu site, some of them will work, and the way they do this, which just fascinating to me, is because it's you're talking about a URL that's probably 10 levels deep at the forum level, which is where they're hosting. So I was wondering, I'm like, how do they get this indexed? And so they're buying expired domains with actual equity in there. I found one that was like a political site that was expired, like a campaign site that had expired, had Wikipedia links pointing to it, and now it's hosting a bunch of explicit, nefarious content.
Yeah, I think people don't realize that when there is enough money, then some of these systems have surprising like upfront costs. I ran into a case where we couldn't figure out why all of these referring domains kept showing up, and it was like 4 or 5 different versions of a WordPress template with the same scraped content, but different domains every single month. 30 domains were being bought every single month with different templates, the same, like 3 batches of scraped content would get pushed onto it, and they just sludged everybody except for one person heavily with these hot links, junk anchor texts, and we kept getting dragged down. So that's why I have a complicated relationship when, John Mew comes on and says, oh, the disavow, you don't have to worry about the disavow, because I've experienced a time where, this is all junk. I didn't do it. It's bad anchor text all over the place. I disavowed it and I saw a positive. We got more. I disavowed it again. I got a positive result. We got more. I think
disavows is a danger. It's a dangerous tool
Yeah.
But when it's used properly and it's used with,
Like a
with
scalpel.
thought and consideration,
Yeah.
it's your, like when I was launching like my little sandbox site, like smallbusinessseohelp.com, and I go on there and I was playing with different types of content, how different qualities of content. And one of the things that happened, I actually lost my whole train of thought there. Sorry about that. Could you go back to your comment? What was your thought there?
Disavow.
Oh yeah, the disavow.
As a scalpel.
So with smallbusinessseohelp.com, what happened was, overnight, I just see my site tank, like impressions, clicks, just drop to zero. And I'm like, what the hell? And I don't have a manual action.
Yeah.
But indexed in Search Console was a bunch of porn links with explicit anchor text. And not just a few, like somebody hit me with about 20,000 referring domains of porn.
Wow.
All .xyz domains and all sorts of spam. And Disavow cleared it up in within a week, 2 weeks.
Yeah, it is a scalpel, and I hope that we get to keep that tool in our arsenal, because I was happy when Penguin changed from the god of wrath and destruction on everything to a more polite god that would sometimes disavow things in the quiet, in the background, and you're never quite sure what's happening there. I think the mystery is good for spammers in certain ways, but it's also like, since there isn't that wrath and vengeance that a lot of people feel like they can get away with it, or that they're, I don't have to worry about it, but there are other signals, like even if the link is quote unquote devalued in terms of positive, that doesn't mean that there aren't other signals that can't become problematic. Anchor text certainly comes to mind.
Anchor text is one of the biggest indicators of relevancy.
I totally agree. 100%.
If you don't have exact match anchor text, if you don't have a significant ratio of that, if you don't have a ratio of branded anchor text, I think if you don't have it, like where people are fearful with link building is like, oh, I bought links and it's going to look spammy. Google's going to give me a manual action. But if you're doing the right sort of link building, you're going to earn that anchor text naturally. But you're also going to earn, naked anchors. You're going to earn,
unbranded,
some generic, and you need that balance. Yeah. But the relevancy comes from that exact match.
Yes.
That exact match, as well as, phrase match variants of your keys.
Yeah. It's also about like the size of the pie. I was talking to a client about this of like, you can go and I can help you get 100 branded anchor text links right now. But however much search you get in branded is however much search. So you can't rank more number one than you have. You just got 10 branded anchor text links. That's good. But if those were unbranded, if those were topical, if those were deep links, if those were to service pages specific to those services, that would open up new markets to you. So thinking about your link building, getting those opportunities to talk to a specific thing and getting anchor text, not just like, it is important to get branded because there is like a tide lifts all boats aspect to a certain degree, but without specific anchors, I've seen so many link profiles where it's, either branded or nothing, and that they just rank for branded or nothing.
Yeah. So and it's that bottom piece of the funnel right there. It's like, we know that we have branded traffic captured, or at least we should have branded traffic captured for high conversion. So it's that expansion past it, and I think that's where I got to shout out like Austin Anderson. I got to shout out Ivan Villalba. Those guys are that's my off page team, and the way they think about off page, the way they think about link building. The sites that they reach out to, everything is done with thought and consideration, because it's like, what's the purpose of a link? The purpose of a link is for me to drive traffic. So it doesn't matter, like, page rank matters, but like, if it's a publication I can't drive traffic from,
then it's the wrong.
Does that link really matter? Like,
and it's not just any traffic too, because like I had a client in a space, and the rehab space, and they put up a post and it went off the rails in February, like 1,000% traffic change for their detox page. Sounds good, right? For their detox blog post. But it was a liver detox post. Mm-hmm. And so liver detox queries, they showed up on all of these people also ask for health, for people that were doing diet pills. And so they showed up and got all of these impressions for like grapeseed oil, for all kinds of like natural herbs and supplements that people are taking to detox their liver and want to know what the impact is on their liver. But they're a rehab and they were tired. They actually happy when that crashed. They're like, oh man, I don't have to talk to another health weight loss person about their liver. I can talk to people who I can help, with this detox problem. So just because you can get traffic doesn't mean it's always the right traffic.
Exactly.
And so like getting those links too, thinking about where it can get published, showing up as a guest on a blog, or showing up as a guest on a podcast. If I show up and I'm selling SEO and I'm on the Icelandic Fisherman podcast, there's not too many Icelandic fishermen who are actually going to contact me to do business with me. So there's like the cynical game of, when you podcast, there's all sorts of distribution, all these third-party sites and opportunity, but you also got to align it with reality,
But you know what? Like, it's funny because it's like, it's that, but then there's also like, you'll get like avenues and pockets where you may not even discover it. And that's the mix right there. It's like, you also have to be willing to experiment and expand a little bit.
Sure.
Without like, because it's like, I don't want to just capture what's known.
Right.
Because I'm a big subscriber in like Blue Ocean Theory, the Harvard Business Review article talking about we're looking for blue oceans, and a red ocean means that it's cannibalized market. We have high competition, and a blue ocean, that's the places where there's low competition, where there's places for us to feed, places for us to grow and expand. And I think so. I always, in my mind, it's like it's a struggle, right? Like it's like I know this is where I need to be. I need to be here. But there may be some interest over here that I can pull in. And when, like, luckily for me, like I have, beyond that off-page team, I also have a digital PR team, shout out to George Bradley and team. They allow, it allows us a nice mix in coverage because they're getting, the high authority, getting a faculty member in the Hill, or getting a faculty member, in the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post, and talking about their research, and then we're covering it, with our content, and we're earning links from relevant, and it just makes a wonderful spread that I think resonates, allows us to train. We've been trying to train Google on brand, on entity connection for years now.
Yeah.
Like in Archer in the higher ed space, this is something, the digital PR strategy wasn't something I created. It's something I inherited and it was gifted to me, and really was such a powerful gift. These two guys, Clayton Dean, Robert Lee, really, they've founded an agency called Circa. I worked there, and they were actually purchased by Archer, and that's how I came under the Archer fold. But they had started with digital PR very early on. You're talking about, 10, 11 years ago. So this is, it's a deep baked process. And like my background, I worked in traditional PR, and I've never seen the digital PR approach that we take. I haven't seen other people take this approach, the way that we do it, the care, the consideration. I would probably say the closest to it is Carrie Rose at Rise at 7 with the way, I've had conversations where we've talked about just her team's care, and, but like George and team are, the relationships they build, and then not only that, the relationships they build with the faculty members, not just the publications, because it allows us to dig out such great insights and really push our universities and say, hey, here's your unique value proposition. Here's what makes your bachelor's in accounting different than this person's bachelor's in accounting.
I think, I was talking to my wife last night that human conversations, experience is becoming more valuable and more commoditized. And, with ChatGPT coming in and faking things, Claude's and Monet's, like all of these systems are coming in and they sound like humans. It's someone used the analogy of, you create a machine that barks like a dog and then you pretend that it is a dog and you forget that it's not. Like, it's nonsense. It sounds like a dog, but it doesn't actually communicate things. So I think, with humans, we kind of undervalue that conversation and the sharing of experience. And there's ways, that you can get as an SEO kind of, plugged into a mindset of, oh, I need to create content. And, it's really easy to open that door. Like, oh, I can do it 10 times faster. I can create 10 times as much content. Well, yes, there's 10 times as many words, but is there 10 times as much value that you're creating?
Exactly. My question always is, are we adding value?
Yeah, a copy of a copy of a copy.
Why does this matter to this person? Why would they want this? Are we asking those? And I think a lot of people don't want to ask those questions because we get so caught up in the online and get so disconnected. Mm-hmm. And I think you see it in how brands market, right? Like the real world activity, something you'll hear across higher ed, which it drives me insane, is folks will say, we have ghost applications. Students will say they've never interacted with any of our advertising. And I'm going to say, no, they just didn't know that they interacted with your advertising. Mm. They were served a passive impression that planted that. Unless I am a legacy student, 2 generations deep, going to a school 3 generations deep, or whatever it is, where did I get that program from? I didn't just pull it out of my mind.
No, there was a seed planted somewhere.
There's awareness. It could have been from a college professor, and that college professor saw my ad, right? Thinking about the ways these things translate to real world experience. And I think a lot of people miss that. They don't understand that, like, hey, if I see a display ad somewhere, someone's going to come back to my site if they didn't convert right away.
Yeah.
And I have data that shows that. Like when my paid team ramps up a spend on brand, right? We see a direct correlation. If they spend too much, they actually suppress brand search. But if they spend just the right amount, we see a lift in brand search.
I think Rand Fishkin just did a short snippet on SparkToro talking about the change in attribution and digital marketing, in that as we see, they become these walled gardens. It doesn't mean that there isn't fruit and vegetable growing in those gardens. It's just there are no links. We can't attribute that click, and that drives my SEO brain kind of crazy of looking at these stats and thinking, how can I get clicks? Can I follow that person and show them that what I did here has this? So it's kind of a step back, because in TikTok that you view and you swipe, or you just view and it just my wife's on her phone and looking at things. And it goes to the next thing, and it goes to the next thing. There's no pause.
But this isn't new, though. Like, if we really think about it, right? Like, the walled gardens, right? I think that's one problem. Like, you look at a Discord, you look at a TikTok, they're their own thing. And we're missing forum content. But I also think, like, that sort of brand, right? Like, that's the Wall Street Journal that gives no one a link, right? Like, yes. that's justifying the value of what's this branded mention. And I think a non-link brand mention, and I think Rand's been at the forefront of that for
a long time.
Yeah, a decade plus. Really understanding that, hey, just because I don't pass page rank doesn't mean it doesn't have value.
Yes.
Like when I first started working with Archer, 2019, we had Harvard Extension School's public leadership credential. And the public leadership credential didn't have any volume at all. Like it was a term that we helped them create, right? There was no search volume, and literally the only campaign was George Bradley and team going out there and doing digital PR, and they did digital PR, and then within 2 months, You're starting to see volume for this credential name that had no. So that stuff matters. It's the thing that's going to generate conversation. That's at least going to get people, going. Like on the side, outside of higher ed, I did there's a smaller client that I worked on, Soul Squeeze. They're a margarita company. They do organic margaritas. Mm-hmm. And we did old school press release to announce the fact that they launched this organic margarita line. And we just did distribution regionally to news stations. We did distribution to organic food sites, and guess what? Within launch, they had 150 links.
Yeah.
Indexed in Search Console. That's Search Console. That's not even counting what Ahrefs or SEMrush found. That's just Search Console.
I think there's a few SEOs that are stuck in their guest post mindset, like, hey, I got to do bulk outreach and do this, and forget that there are other ways to communicate with the world outside the internet, and that things outside the internet impact what's contained 100%. On it. It's a reflection of. It's not individual from. They're symbiotic. In good and bad ways. Like there's bad things that happen in the world and they reflect on the internet, and bad things on the internet that start to reflect in the real world. Yeah,
I have a fun example for this too. So years ago, I worked on LSU Online. So I, helped create the framework that built that site up, did all the redirection to really make it a powerhouse. But that site was fun because I was working on it during the national championship run for LSU football. Mm. And on game day, that's what we had this conversation on Twitter. You'd have that million spike in impressions, and then an extra 100K in clicks on game day, and then it would just drop back down. So everything reporting looked so wild. Everything was like an anomaly because it was just such a large spike. But and I would ask them, what are you guys doing to drive that traffic besides just brand mentions of LSU? And they're like, well, we have a banner that shows in the end zone that just says online.lsu.edu.
That's here I am.
You can't compete with that's real world tangible stuff. That's just who's accounting for that?
Right. I mean, hopefully you can claim credit for it, but
it was so definitive that there was no.
Yeah.
There's no and with that engagement, it was a simple SEO engagement. I think when the way kind of Archer approaches it from a cross channel standpoint, it's most of my conversations I have, I'm when I'm talking strategy, I'm talking with the VP of paid, I'm talking with the VP of creative, I'm talking with the VP of content, and we're all saying, what are we going to do from a strategy standpoint? And we're going to put all of our notes together and brainstorm this out. Because we understand that the cross channel is what's going to be that saves us. Great, SEO ranked really well, but it didn't convert, and so our paid cost per acquisition was 3 times what it's supposed to be. That's not a great story to tell.
Yeah, it's about thinking, not getting siloed as an SEO and shunted to the side. Being an afterthought means proactively trying to work with and find opportunities to take it to that next step. A couple of big successes I've had is actually working with the customer support team on a SaaS and realizing what are the questions that you keep answering that the friction that exists, either with the product or with information about the product. We wish that people knew that this did this. Everybody keeps asking, does it do this? And we're yes, it does this. And so it was a 2-part prong of okay, well, let's actually add that in the app as one of the top things that we do. This was for Raven Tools. And then we'll also add that content, create a blog post, update the help text section to focus on that thing. And that had, multiple, blow by effects. There were so many fewer tickets asking do we do that? And also so much more traffic or for the end service that was connected to. And it also reduced churn and increased the number of people that converted from paid trial. So, like talking, multidiscipline and not, siloing yourself. So that means talking to your business owner for a second and a third time, get him on an interview, somewhere, and listen to what he's saying and make sure that your content reflects that. Make sure that what they're
100%.
passionate about, like if they're explaining and talking to somebody, it's hard being in an SEO. I really recommend trying to get your end client of a small business to do an interview, because in that third party situation, their sales mode clicks on. There's the reason they have passion and it's driven, and you can kind of see, I totally didn't talk about that service, or didn't talk about how the pride and, how he built this boutique business from the ground up, focusing on, hard work principles, or this, there's something in that story to pull out. Like, again, back to the human value aspect, the human story angle.
100%. I tell it, I was recently on a search engine journal and Wix panel. And I talked about this a little bit, but so I'm privileged. I have an admissions team that, sometimes, Archer will do admissions, sometimes we have partners, but we have the benefit of getting direct feedback from a sales team.
Yeah.
We can overcome sales objections before they even become objections. Right? Like, that's such a powerful thing. And I think a lot of people overlook it, but I've worked in sales. I sold cars. I had to look somebody in their face and say, give me $10,000 because your credit sucks. Right? Like, that is such an uncomfortable thing, but it allows you to handle objections, right? Like, a lot of how I look at, an objection versus a complaint, like if somebody's saying something 3 times, if I get 3 users that have the same objection, that's a complaint to me. That's something that needs to be addressed. And that's something, from a sales standpoint, like, he's a little batshit, but Grant Cardone, I don't know if you're familiar with Grant Cardone. He's a sales guy. He's a little out there. He's a little kooky, but he has this program called the Road to the Sale, and it'll break down a sales the scientific steps to a sale. Like, it's the greet. I then find common ground. I then start my demo. And then after my demo, I ask a scaling question. And then after my demo, I shut up and I start negotiating. It's all stepped out. But when you're able to understand a sale at that level, it really helps you understand the psychology, and that translates really well to the marketing. Right.
Because if you can overcome the objection before they even go into the meeting, then that's one less roadblock to that.
100%. And you think of it like this: you're improving the conversion rate without even fully engaging with your client.
Yeah, I've described it as a friction.
Yep.
If
that's a perfect
you're
example.
on a gravel path,
yep,
and you're sliding something, there's pushback constantly. It's the same grade, the same slope, same objective, but if you can smooth that out, get a smoother surface, take some rocks out of the way, with content on your site, with article, with some keyword research, figuring out what are those things people also ask. They're asking those things because they don't know. You should say, get those out. It doesn't fit for everybody, and they're it's hard to overcome some of the photographer syndrome of I can put a picture and it will explain everything kind of mentality. You gotta say things on your site. The internet exists mostly in words. There's value in pictures and there's value in audio, but audio is just a different way of presenting written content. So a picture can say 1,000 words, but not the same words to everybody. So there's so many commercial photographers, luxury owners, spas and salons are particularly guilty of, I just want pretty pictures of my salon because it'll speak so much to
it's any business that is looking to build in Squarespace first always worries me, because it's okay, then are we only focused on the aesthetic?
Right.
And Yeah, I always get nervous with that stuff. It's like, because I'm like, yeah, it's luxury, but like, you also want to give context. Like, I get minimalism, but like, yeah, you're leaving up open, a lot open for interpretation, which it's like, let's be direct. Let's like a good website, what's it do? It directs somebody to take an action that we want them to take.
Right. And some actions, it's kind of crazy because there's a kind of an inverse of like, the more expensive the service, the more pictures and the less text they want to say. Like you're asking more out of less, and hoping that you're saying the right thing.
Look, if I'm remodeling my bathroom and I'm buying Italian marble,
yeah,
and I'm going on a site and I'm buying this expensive piece of like sheet of marble, I want to know where it comes from. I want to know why it's worth this.
Yeah.
Like I want to know all those things that what makes it luxury.
Yeah.
Definitely. Right? Like and I think perhaps that's the difference where, because for some brands it's like they don't have to. They don't like, if I'm Louis Vuitton, I don't necessarily know if I have to say why this is luxury.
That's true, but the majority of clients are not Louis Vuitton. Like they
exactly, and that's the difference. It's like that's where brand, right? Like brand can help you there, but like if you're not that brand, like I had buddies, these guys are clothing designers from Puerto Rico. Details matter, great clothing brand, but what can I do? I'm going to have them rank for red shirt. Everything is brand. So I gave them a template for their brand. I said, hey, what you guys want to do is hop on podcasts and mention your brand. Talk about your brand. Anytime somebody writes you up, link it back to your site. And you see these guys and all the traffic they're doing and they're generating is just brand building. And I think, it just depends on the individual business.
Sure.
Because, I worked on Amplify Pictures, which is a movie studio in California. Like, Joe Lewis, who's the executive producer and owner and founder of that, all he wanted to do was rank for his name, because there was another one in the UK, but these guys did like 100-foot wave with HBO. So he's like, I want to make sure that people know I did the 100-foot wave, and I want to rank for my brand. And simple, so I think, with some of that stuff, like some of those higher end tier clients, it's very simple brand building. But when you get into the smaller, more nuanced goods and services that that are more expensive, you better have a lot of touch points and a lot of justification and a lot of value building.
Absolutely. So just wrapping up, if you have any one piece of advice, action item, actionable, like do it today, what would that be for the person that's listening?
I think it's just keep learning technology, right? Like what will make you understand how search engines, how anything works, is understanding the stack, right? Like understanding how it operates at the base level. How is content pulled together? How is it served? How do people interact with it? Have that sort of curious mindset for whatever's going forward, because we're at a very interesting time where we don't know what the future of search is. We simply don't. And so, my best, piece of advice is to stay curious, keep learning. And then I wanted to do one thing. I wanted to shout out some more team members, if that's okay.
Do it.
I want
to
shout out Nikki Sandberg. I want to shout out Sean Taylor. I want to shout out Tyler Putz, Steven Spalding. All of my team members who are great. Everyone, all my editors, Michael Longo, Ann Law, Charlotte. Oh my God. I can go on and on about my wonderful team. I am blessed, and everything I am is because of them and because they arm me with the weapons to go out there and do damage every day. So shout out to them, and thank you for all their hard work. And thank you, Jeremy, for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can people find you? Are you on social? Are you mostly on LinkedIn or?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is Raymond Martinez SEO. That's slug, all dashes in between there. You can find me on Ray Martinez SEO on X.com. And then on Threads, Ray_MRTNZ. That is me. I'm tepidly stepping into that platform. So
a bold move, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him. All right. Thanks so much for your time, Ray. Thanks.
Hey, Jared, thank you for having me on.